we're gonna check it anyway. We didn't get it.
Because I mean, I don't know how you look at it. That's what I mean. Can I look at it as first time or can I look at it as a replacement? Because I mean, in here, let's see, full basement, not full basement. You can go down to 5 feet.
If we take the square footage off and we move it back, well, then we want to be able to square these things off. So let's say we just take and put that there, make it more rectangular when we put a real foundation in.
Because when you figure out your footprint,
Yep.
you go by what's existing right now. Okay, so no matter if you took this off and moved it back here, it doesn't really matter. Just at the beginning of it, this is where it is, so you have that volume. That's what I was talking about. You can use.
My name is Mary Quirk, and I am the Administrative Assistant for Code Enforcement, for Zoning, and for the Planning Board. I'm also the Recording Secretary for both Zoning Board and Planning Board. My responsibilities are intake of all permit applications, assisting with the completion of those, reviewing them for completeness, forwarding those to the Code Enforcement Officer, Scott Dvorak, except for the plumbing and electrical, which I process. I keep a record of all incoming permits and pertinent information. Once they are returned from Scott, if they're approved, I record them in a database and complete any necessary sections of them and call the applicants to let them know that their permits have been approved. I also handle 90% of the incoming phone calls. Any that I can handle, I do so. Any that I can't handle or need a more authoritative voice, I've put into Scott's call queue in our calendar program here and help him keep track of those and what the priorities are. In addition, I handle all the scheduling of his appointments and for all the inspections out of office or meetings in the office, and include the appointment from the Google Calendar so that he knows what the topic is. I put as much information as I can into those appointments, who it is, when it is, locations, any questions they have confided in me, any concerns, any history that I know of on the matter. Most of my job is taken up supporting Scott and making sure that he can make the best use of his limited time.
Hi, my name is Scott Dvorak. I'm the Code Enforcement Officer for Town of Raymond. I replaced Chris Hansen, who moved on to Wyndham in October, end of October. I was a code officer, assistant code officer in Gorham for 4 years. Moved to Raymond, job appeared. I thought it would be a great fit. I have construction experience. I have 33 years of construction experience in Bridgeton, so I thought that the code office was a good choice. I do enjoy working in a smaller town as opposed to the bigger town. The Town of Raymond, I understand, is somewhat similar to Bridgeton in that it has an influx of summer population growth, which could make it interesting in the summer. It has been a learning experience for me, coming from a bigger town to a smaller town. It's actually a lot more involved than what I really envisioned, but in a good way, constantly learning new stuff. We try to be, between Mary and I, Mary's a first. She'd be the one that you contact first. She will try to answer as best she can, and then if not, then she passes it on to me.
Anybody coming up to that window is going to get my attention, and I will do everything I can to help them. I am kind of you've seen the sign that says gatekeeper. Scott needs to stay focused on a lot of things, so I try to intercept as many people as possible and help them at this level. If I can't, then if Scott is available, I can get them in to see him. Our goal is to help you achieve your idea while adhering to all the codes and regulations. If you come in with, I'd like to do this, and it's not possible under the ordinances and the regulations and building codes, part of what Scott does is sit down with the person and say, okay, we can't do this, but if you change this, or if we modify this, then we can do that. So it's not saying, no, you can't do that, and you're done. It's, let's see if we can find some way to make this work for you. It may not be exactly what you want, but we'll do our best to get as close to it as possible.
the main objective is that, well, there's several kind of intertwined. The biggest one is to make sure all the ordinances that the town had passed are being followed. My job is to make sure that they are, and also to inform the public, because a lot of times they are unsure as to what they need. They call and ask what they need to do, if it's possible to do it. So it's a informative yet a teaching mode at the same time. The other aspect is the building part. It's to make sure that they meet the code, statewide code, the MUBEC code, which is a minimum. I try to explain that to me. I can't grade on workmanship, but there's a minimum and they have to at least meet that. A lot of times, well, some of the calls that I do get are, my contractor says I need to do this, is this what he needs to do? And we go, basically just kind of ask them what it is that they're doing, and then I'll talk to them, look it up if I have to, if I don't know it right off the top of my head, and then get back in touch with them and tell them that this is the minimum requirement for whatever it is that the gentleman is doing. And they can call and I can tell them basically what I do for inspections and what the process is, which a lot of times that's how I get in contact with them at first. The homeowner will come in and they want to know what they can do. I walk them through as far as what I need for my requirements for the building permit, driveway permit, and such, what I need for plans and stuff like that. Then after that, it's when the building starts that sometimes I will get a question as to, he says he has to do this, costs more money, does this have to be done? And, I try to understand exactly what it is they're asking and figure it out. And sometimes it's just something as simple as just calling the contractor, going out, taking a look, and talk with both of them at the same time that this is a requirement, this is what's needed, rather than just doing it with a phone call. And sometimes the good thing about going out to the job site is you have a tendency to answer more. It's more informative for both. They're both aware, therefore they're going to make a better decision down the road.
There are some misconceptions, there are some areas of ignorance, and I don't blame people because unless you've dealt with it, you don't know what's going on. Until I started working in code enforcement, I didn't realize how complex it was and all the requirements. And since we live in an area that has so much shoreland, there are a lot of mysteries out there for all of us. People don't understand that a building permit is required for a lot of things, and the reason for that is there are building codes that have to be adhered to, and some of them may seem ridiculous, and people don't understand why they have to do it this way. Odds are it's because something bad has happened, and the codes have been adjusted to meet that. People don't understand that they can't do anything they want to on the shoreland. There are severe restrictions, and that's an area that usually I send directly to Scott because shoreland zoning is just a humdinger.
The other one that we mentioned, like I said, the shoreland zoning, that is a big subject here. It's just that there's so much shoreland, so probably 85 to 90% of my work is with shoreland, whether it's housing, what they can do with the house. If there's an issue with trees in the shoreland zone, we'll go out and do a site visit. Sometimes it's just maintenance work, but DEP is definitely wanting to make sure that have a good interpretation of what the state is asking, and then what the ordinance for the town of Raymond also say as well, which can be a little more restrictive than the state. Just because the Raymond has a big concern that they want to keep the shoreline looking the way it is and the water quality.
It's close to the
Well, there are no arches. You've got to follow that coastline. That's what's got to look like here when you go.
right, but this is the closest point, so this is further on this end when we go back.
Yeah.
So
You're right. You should be fine because if anything,
We work with Portland Water District, keep them apprised of what's going on in the Sebago area. Septic systems in particular, we need to notify them of those. We're going to be having a meeting with members of the Portland Water District soon, Scott and I, to go over and make sure that we're covering all the bases and streamline some of our communications. With the DEP, it's more so, there's a lot of things that we've had to call and ask somebody to come down and come with us to a particular site because it does involve state regulations And we want to make sure that we are adhering to those, and the property owner needs to hear it from the state and understand that this is what's going on and we're not just being arbitrary. My approach, and I think it's Scott's as well, how do I want to be treated? If I walked in with these questions, how would I want to be treated? And I want somebody to take me seriously. And that's what we do. And I will do what I can. There are things I can't do, and things that we say, you know, we really can't go there and do this, but I'll help you.
Mary and I have a great rapport. I respect her immensely for the information that she has and her experience. A couple of times I've just listened to her and interact with a resident of Raymond, and I'm very happy at how she helps them out. She's very kind, courteous with them, and she does a very good job of helping them out for the information that they're needed, which makes me feel better when I'm out in the field. I don't worry about anybody coming in the office and getting misinformation or anything like that. She's a very good resource for the town of Raymond. And if Mary and I don't have the answer, I mean, I usually try to get information so they can, to help them, whether it's assessing or they have to contact the state. It depends on what it is that they're asking, but you try to give them the information that they need to, or who to get in contact with. It may not be through us, but it still is a service that we kind of provide that will try to help you find the answers that you're looking for. The best way to get a hold of the code office, you're probably talking to Mary, and that is 655-4742 extension 161. That'll go either in, Mary will either be in touch with you there or it'll be in her voicemail. The other way is to give me an email, and that's at ceo@raymondmaine.org. I usually try to respond within a suitable time. Sometimes when I'm busy, it is hard to get in contact. That's why the best thing to do is call the office, because that way Mary can maybe answer your questions already. And if I'm in passing, sometimes she'll ask me what the message is, and I'll tell her what the answer is, and she'll call them back as I'm headed out the door or something like that. So those are the best ways to get a hold of us if you have any questions.